given as like, oh, when people see a woman at a gaming convention, a game developers convention, they assume that she's somebody's wife rather than an actual game developer. So I would say that's more, I guess that is a stereotype, that is a gender role that they're falling into, or someone is perpetuating. That might be the case. All right, so that is just some of that's some instance of how these ways that women are kept from this field. Oh, one more example, one more stereotypical example, or a sexist example. Actually, I wanted to share that I almost forgot. It is this, that women are supposed to choose between a family and career. This is a problem. I think this is more of a family problem, and it does affect women in a unique way. But it does usually take a man and a woman to make a baby, or at least to facilitate the conception. You can't artificially generate semen or whatever like that. So, or a sperm, I should say. So you'd need a sperm and an egg to create a baby. So men and women both play a very real role in this. In this way. So women feel like they can't have these jobs because of the fact that they need to take care of their kids, and they feel like there's not adequate support provided towards women that want to have families and that want to participate in these competitive driven fields that are so allegedly dominated by men. Allegedly. Okay? So they are victims of stereotypes. They're objectified, over-sexualized, and they are kept out of the field because they feel like they have to choose. We talked about victim blaming. So we're going to move on to harassment now. Now, as we kind of covered a little bit of this, but we kind of talked to and some other people brought it up a couple of times. We talked about Gamergate. Let me read this comment real quick. Okay, Moocher, let's say I always like in a comic books when it shows a girl holding a guy's hand and they run away from something, or shows a man protecting a woman. I think it's overtly strong and independent woman trying is overdone in comics. Moocher, we're gonna kind of talk about that. You might, I would say that is actually, no, we can talk about this right now. Let's talk about that. You feel like in comic books that women, it's a popular theme now in comic books to present women in a very very strong role, like, oh, I can take on anything. Hi Tazzy, good to see you. That you feel it's overdone, that women being strong and independent is overdone. Here's the thing, I would refute that in the sense that as a comic book reader myself and collector, the majority of the comics I own all different kinds of comics. I own Marvel comics, I own DC comics, I own a lot of independent titles, titles that are owned by creator-owned titles, and in most of those comic books, they are male protagonists, and even more so in those comics, they're white males protagonists in those stories. So you'll see many examples of any forms of visual media, whether there's film, comic books, or video games, of a white male being the traditional protagonist in a story. And why is that? It's because that, and a lot of the people that get the funding to produce their content or involved in those fields of study or production are white males. And I'm trying to look at this very objectively, because I have my own opinion on this matter. But I do feel like there might be a underrepresentation of women in comic books. Now, whether that's sexist or not is up to debate. I am not saying that because there is an underrepresentation of women in comic books that is inherently sexist, because that is not true. If I were to produce content, if I were to write a movie script, if I was to write a comic book or develop a game, I would more than likely develop a story based around a male character that I could identify with, a white male, hence the white male stereotype that's often seen in these settings. Is that sexist? I don't think so. I don't think that these game developers that sit around in a circle and create these games, that doesn't make them sexist simply because they're creating a character that they feel is really cool, or that they feel like they can identify with. I don't necessarily feel like it's overdone in comic books when you see a strong, independent female. I don't think that's overdone by any means. I will say that sometimes the way they handle the material, they make it seem like this is a token character. Anita Sarkeesian actually addresses this, but she addresses it kind of in a different way. She's saying, like, the industry will throw this demographic a bone every now and then and say, look, we have a female character right here, and that should be good. That should hold you over for a while. But I wouldn't argue it from that standpoint. I would say that you'll see examples of female characters in these media forms, but I don't think it's to specifically target a demographic that might make the field feel more inclusive. But I think it's specifically used for a retail sales purposes. They were wondering, how can we get women to buy more comic books? How can we get women to buy more video games? How can we get more women to buy more AAA titles? If you this is going to go kind of into our critical argument section, but I'm going to say this right now. If people think that a company's decision is based off of perpetuating just a gender stereotype, they clearly have no conception of how a company is run, because that business model is not a sustainable one. A business's job is to make money, is to be a business. And then to be in the business of making money, you have to do things to make money. That means attracting buyers. So how do they do that? They target demographics. So they will make characters for people. They'll hire writers that will write in a character that will target an individual, to make them feel more inclusive, make it feel like I have something to read now. You think that female leads are overly powerful. I think it's interesting when someone is not afraid to portray women and relying on a man on occasion. It's okay to do that. I think it is okay to do that, Moocher. And I think there's lots of instances where you see that happening, though. And thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. You'll see oftentimes that there are... Okay, all right, AOC, take it easy. So you'll see a lot of times, women. There's plenty of examples of women relying on a man to protect her. If you look at all the old Spider-Man comics, if you look at all the old Superman comics, you see a lot of that. That might have been changing in recent years. That might be a changing trend. Now, again, that is an argument to be made. Is that inherently sexist? Now, is that because more females are getting involved in the storylines, and that's why we're seeing this shift? Are we seeing more stronger female leads because of the fact that more females are now involved in this field, or are they being targeted? Are people saying, well, we got to get more girls to read these comics because we need to make more money, and we need to make them feel included so people don't think we're sexist or haters, and then they write a story for a female specifically to get her to buy comic books. To me, is that an example of sexism? I would say that's an example of sexism. One could argue that something like what is that phrase? It's the laws that come with equal opportunity laws. I forgot what it's called. It specifically pertains towards minorities. You could say, yeah, it's a marketing move, Vince. That's a really good point. Yeah, thank you. It's a marketing move. Hi, Conqueror. I forgot the word that it's called when you use, like, it's supposed to do with minorities and adjusting the way it like standards to fit different to fit. They lower the bar so more people feel inclusive and more people are involved in the study or something like that. As being intelligent, yeah, me too. I do too. But no, I kind of see what you're saying, but I would respectfully disagree. I would say that there are a lot of examples of females being not as powerful. So you'll see examples of white females who fall in my horror flicks. Yeah, but I can see of a lot of different examples of women not taking as aggressive roles or not being portrayed in really powerful roles. You could say Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy were excellent examples of that. I'm sure the list can go on. Like I said, Lois Lane. I'm trying to think of some of the current titles I'm reading right now. That might be the case. You are seeing a large cultural shift, and I would say that it's more in favor of supporting this anti-damsel in distress trope. We talked about the damsel in distress trope and how that affects gender stereotyping and gender roles and how that plays into that, and how that might be disparaging to females. So there is a lot of examples of that. So let's kind of I feel like I'm kind of losing my thought process. So in order to move it along, I want to move on to harassment. So the third category, we talked about over-sexualization or hypersexualization of the characters. We talked about gender roles. Now we're going to talk about harassment. All right, so harassment is often perpetuated. The family career thing is bullcrap. Why do you think that, Artie? So let's hear what Artie has to say. I'll move on to harassment while we deal with that. Now, harassment, it is alleged that females are very much so, I don't want to say beneficiaries. They're recipients, that's the word I'm looking for. They're recipients of very specific targeted harassments that are meant to target females that are that are very harmful and disparaging towards women and unfair. Now, I don't know if you guys know anything about Gamergate, but Gamergate is an excellent example of an instance where female were specifically being targeted, where a female or females were being specifically targeted by allegedly being targeted by an online journal activist group going by the name of Gamergate. Let me take a sip of water here. Vince, I'm kind of glad you brought that up. What you just said, we're going to talk about that in the third section. That plays into identity politics, and we're going to talk about identity politics. And so, Artie, you're saying that men have families too, and you don't think it's fair that parents get all the time off and have to leave. Yeah, and that is an excellent example. That is another critical analysis that I wanted to get to in my third section that I wanted to talk about. That was actually something that I wanted to mention. And it is a perfectly acceptable argument and a reasonable one at that. And I'm grateful that both of you guys made really good points, and that's going to play into section 3 of the podcast. So, really quick, just in case, I could kind of give you, like I said, the watered-down version of the Gamergate controversy. Allegedly, a journal rights activist group going by the name of Gamergate, which promotes advocacy and gaming journalism, have to have been alleged in the targeting of specific females in the gaming industry and just like in the media in general. They were attacking them with like hate speech. They were attacking them with death threats, doxing, or is it doxing or doxing? Doxing, swatting, threats of like I